Ray Trapani wasn't like most people his age. He didn't want a normal job or to slowly work his way up in a company. That life seemed boring to him. Ray wanted to be rich, filthy rich, and he wanted it fast. He didn't believe in waiting. Instead, he was always coming up with new ideas, new tricks, new ways to get money quick. He believed if there was a faster way to win in life, he'd find it. By 2017, Ray was in Miami, Florida, a city known for fast cars, big parties, and people trying to look rich. Ray didn't have the money to live that life yet, but he wanted it badly. What he did have was a lot of ambition and a huge ego. He believed he deserved to live like a millionaire, and he was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. This wasn't Ray's first time dancing with risky ideas. Long before he ever heard the word crypto, Ray was already dipping his toes into shady waters. He had gotten involved in selling prescription drugs, stuff people needed a doctor for, but Ray was getting it through backdoor channels and flipping it for quick cash. That worked for a while, but like most street-level hustles, it didn't last. The heat got too real, and the hustle dried up. Not one to sit still, Ray linked up with a couple of his friends. They managed to gather enough money to start something a bit more legit, a luxury car rental business. For a brief moment, it looked like they had cracked the code. The cars were flashy, the logo looked clean, and their social media made it seem like they were killing it. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. None of them really knew how to run a business. They were partying more than planning, spending more than saving, and acting more like rock stars than entrepreneurs. They burned through their profits faster than they made them. Before long, the whole thing collapsed. Ray was broke again. No money, no real business, and no clue what came next. But what he did have was that fire in his gut, the same one that told him he was meant for more. He couldn't shake the dream of making it big. And just when it seemed like everything had fallen apart for good, a strange new opportunity came knocking. One afternoon, Ray was chilling with his buddy Saurabh Sharma, a guy who liked to call himself Sam. Sam was the type who was always dressed to impress, full of confidence, and never short on big ideas. He and Ray were cut from the same cloth, both bold, broke, and always hunting for the next big score. Sam leaned in and dropped a bomb. What if we made a debit card for cryptocurrency? Ray didn't have a clue about how crypto worked. Words like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and blockchain were just a bunch of noise to him. But Sam's pitch had something that caught Ray's attention. The idea sounded sexy. Crypto was all the rage. People were making insane money off it, and there was this crazy buzz online. It was like a gold rush, and all Ray and Sam needed to do was carve out a spot in that chaos. It didn't matter that they didn't know the first thing about crypto. The potential to make quick cash was enough to keep them dreaming. So, they decided to go for it, fake it until they made it. So they started thinking, if people believe we've built this amazing crypto debit card, one that lets users spend their crypto just like cash, we could raise some serious money. There was just one tiny problem: the card didn't actually exist. Neither did the technology to make it. And, to top it off, Ray, Sam, and their crew didn't know the first thing about how to create it. But that didn't matter to them. In their eyes, the product wasn't the important part. What mattered was the story, it was the hype. If they could sell the idea well enough, make people believe it was real, then investors would pour in. And once the money started coming, they figured they could worry about the rest later. The goal wasn't to build something solid, it was to build enough excitement to fake it until they made millions. And just like that, the scam was born. They were ready to play the game of smoke and mirrors. They decided to call their company Centra Tech. It sounded modern, official, and just vague enough to trick people into thinking it was the real deal. They quickly threw together a sleek website with flashy product mock-ups, technical jargon, and a mission statement that sounded like it belonged in a high-powered Silicon Valley pitch meeting. Everything looked polished, like a company that had its act together. To sell the illusion even more, Ray, Sam, and their third co-founder, Robert Farkas, or Farkas, got dressed in fancy suits and posed for professional-looking photos. They uploaded the photos to the website, giving the impression that they were experienced entrepreneurs, not a bunch of clueless 20-somethings playing dress-up. But they weren't done yet. They needed more than just a nice website and a few photos. They needed to really sell the dream. They went full con artist mode. They created fake LinkedIn profiles, listing themselves as Harvard grads and crypto pioneers. They invented a fake CEO, Michael Edwards, by literally Googling "old white guy" and pulling a random photo from the internet. They claimed partnerships with Visa and MasterCard, even though neither company had ever heard of them. To the untrained eye, Centra Tech looked the part. The branding was slick. The language was full of technical buzzwords. If you didn't look too closely, it seemed like a legitimate, promising startup ready to take the world by storm. But the real game began when they hit the crypto message boards. Ray, Sam, and Farkas flooded Reddit threads, Telegram chats, and online forums, hyping up Centra Tech like it was about to change the entire crypto world. The Centra card is going to revolutionize the crypto space, they proclaimed. No more waiting to transfer your funds, just swipe and go. It was all made up, complete fiction. But the crypto world was a frenzy. People were desperate to invest in anything that mentioned blockchain or cryptocurrency. And just like that, Centra Tech started drawing in real investors. At first, it was small amounts, just a few $1,000s here and there. But then, something bigger happened. A minor crypto influencer gave Centra Tech a shout-out. That one simple mention lit a fire under the whole thing. The hype exploded. The influencer shout-out was like rocket fuel for Centra Tech. In a matter of hours, everything changed. The company exploded in popularity. Investors came rushing in, throwing thousands, even tens of thousands, of dollars into what seemed like the next big thing in crypto. Ray, Sam, and Farkas didn't waste a second. They rode the wave of hype as hard as they could. With the momentum on their side, they knew exactly what they needed to do next. Get loud. Get famous. Get rich. First things first, they upgraded their lifestyle. No more working out of bedrooms or coffee shops. They rented a sleek office in a high-end building, making it look like Centra Tech was a legitimate, serious startup. The office wasn't just for show, it was a way to keep the illusion alive. Then, they hired about 50 employees. Most of them had no idea they were working for a scam. The team was growing, the money was flowing in, and it all seemed real, except it wasn't. But as long as the investors kept pouring in, Ray and his crew didn't care. They were riding high, and the goal was clear: keep the money coming. To really sell the illusion of legitimacy, Ray and his crew took it a step further. They printed glossy, slick Centra debit cards. These cards were completely fake, non-functional, just pieces of plastic, but they looked real. And that was all that mattered. They handed these cards out at crypto conferences, showed them off in promotional videos, and kept pitching Centra Tech as the future of crypto payments. But the real game changer came when two massive celebrities jumped on board. Floyd Mayweather, the undefeated boxing champion, posted about Centra Tech. His endorsement alone was huge. But then DJ Khaled, the famous music producer and social media king, jumped in too. He started hyping up Centra Tech's coin to his millions of followers. Suddenly, Centra Tech wasn't just some shady, unknown startup. It looked like the next big thing in the crypto space. Investors, many of whom didn't even understand crypto, wanted in. They saw the celebrities endorsing it and thought it had to be legit. And that's exactly what Ray and his crew had been waiting for: the rush of attention and the flood of cash. The hype was unstoppable now. So they launched their own cryptocurrency, CentraCoin, and started selling it to the public in what's called an ICO, initial coin offering. If you're not familiar, an ICO is basically like a stock IPO, but for crypto. You launch a coin, hype it up, and people buy in early hoping it'll blow up. And in this case, CentraCoin was flying off the shelves. And just like that, they raised over $25 million in just a few weeks. With millions in their pockets, Ray and his friends were living the high life. Ray hit the mall every day, buying custom-tailored suits, designer shoes, Rolex watches, and carrying stacks of cash like he was living in a rap video. He bought luxury cars, dined at five-star restaurants, and posed for photos like a true tech mogul, soaking in the attention. But behind the scenes, they were panicking. The pressure to actually deliver something, anything, even a working prototype, was starting to mount. Investors were getting anxious. They wanted results, and fast. But the technology they were promising? It either didn't exist or was way too advanced for them to create. They had nothing to show, but the money kept coming. The deeper they got, the harder it was to keep up the illusion. Still, they kept up the lie. They promised investors, the Centra card will be ready by Christmas. They had their employees working on a fake app, just something they could show off in demos. And every time someone asked hard questions, they dodged, lied, or made up a new story. The hype train was moving so fast that most people didn't stop to ask if the tracks were real. But one person did. A reporter at the New York Times. A reporter had been hearing the buzz around Centra Tech and decided to dig a little deeper. Something about the company didn't sit right, and he was determined to figure out what. He began sifting through the company's website, social media, and, most importantly, their leadership team. The first red flag? The mysterious CEO, Michael Edwards. Now, here's the thing, Michael Edwards wasn't real. He was just a random photo Ray and his team found by Googling old white guy. His resume was made up. His background was fabricated. In fact, his entire existence was a complete lie. Once the reporter connected the dots, the whole thing started to crumble. He reached out to Centra Tech, asking to speak to Michael Edwards directly. Ray and the crew scrambled, throwing out one excuse after another. Oh, he's busy. He's traveling. He's in meetings. It was all a cover-up, and the reporter wasn't buying it. The walls were starting to close in. They knew their time was running out, so they made a bold and desperate move. They killed off their fake CEO. Seriously. They put out a press release claiming that Michael Edwards, the man who never existed, had tragically died in a car accident. It was a cheap attempt to deflect attention and buy them some time. And, strangely enough, it worked, at least for a little while. The spotlight shifted, and people stopped asking as many questions. But they still needed a new leader. So they did the only thing they could think of. They grabbed a photo of Ray's grandfather, uploaded it to the Centra Tech website, and named him the new CEO. It didn't take long for the internet to catch on. A few Reddit users found Ray's Facebook profile, where they noticed pictures of Ray and his grandfather together. They matched the photos of the new CEO to Ray's grandpa, and it was painfully obvious. The mask was slipping. The cracks were starting to show. Even with growing suspicion, Ray and his crew kept the hustle going. They rushed to finish the fake app, rehearsed presentations, and kept pitching new investors. Somehow, they raised another $15 million. They were untouchable, at least, that's what they thought. The company looked like it was still booming from the outside. Employees were busy. Celebrities were still shouting them out. Investors were still pouring in. But the cracks were growing wider. That New York Times article finally dropped, and it hit like a bomb. It exposed their fake CEO, their sketchy backgrounds, and their shady history, including past criminal records. And once the media got involved, so did the feds. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, launched an official investigation. That was the moment everything began to unravel. Once the SEC came knocking, Centra Tech fell apart, fast. Most of the 50-plus employees were let go. The founders started turning on each other. They began draining the company's bank accounts, trying to get whatever money they could before the hammer dropped. And then it did. Ray Trapani was arrested. So were Saurabh Sharma, Sam, and Robert Farkas. It was over. The lavish lifestyle, the suits, the fake cards, the constant social media flexing, it all came crashing down in just a matter of days. Ray, now facing serious federal charges, had a choice to make. And in the end, he decided to flip. He pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Saurabh Sharma, aka Sam, and Robert Farkas. Because he cooperated, Ray got the deal of a lifetime. Sam was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Farkas got 1 year. And Ray? Ray didn't serve a single day in prison. The man who helped create a completely fake company, lied to thousands of investors, and stole tens of millions of dollars, walked free. He got off with a slap on the wrist. Ray eventually told his story in the 2024 Netflix documentary Bitcoin. In the interviews, he smirked, acting like it was no big deal. He bragged about how easy it was to pull off the scam and admitted that he never planned to actually build anything real. His goal was simple: get rich. And for a while, he did. He used the hype and the fake promises to make a lot of money. But in the end, it was all just a game to him, and he got away with it, while many others lost their money. Ray Trapani wasn't a genius. He wasn't a tech visionary. He wasn't even particularly sneaky. But he understood something that's more powerful than money or even knowledge.